and you can quote this on me. There is no way the Orioles or Red Sox make the playoffs this season. There's no way. There's no way.
I set the bar really low at the NBA predictions.
I don't think all Mavs fans look into the stats like I do.
It's not the Great Value Target brand toilet paper or whatever. It's the Charmin Ultra Strong.
I don't know if Nick Nurse is the coach for the Raptors. I don't know if he's the reason why they won the 2019 championship. I feel like that was more of a team effort.
The Mavs cannot say we do not miss Seth Curry shooting threes.
This questions the firing of Dwayne Casey, who I think is a very underrated coach.
To me, the Capitals really pushed all their chips for this season.
Hello, I'm Mike Grimes, and you've been listening to Outsiders Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NBA Opinions of the Week. And as we are recording, the first four is happening. But it does beg a question. This year, of course, there are a lot of top picks, but there's always some guys that are in March Madness that are going to go high in the NBA draft. And it does beg the question, how does a tournament of a one game decides it tournament impact or how much should it impact these evaluations, Austin?
I think that tournaments are a very special environment. It's win or go home, and how much a player impacts their draft stock, I think should not necessarily just be tied to how they're playing, but also leadership qualities, their ability to adjust. And sometimes it's more indicative of how a player plays when they're not playing well than when they are. An example of this is a player that I've watched a lot this year, Darius Acuff. He's had some bad games after he scored almost 50 against Bama. He had a poor-ish game against A&M, and Arkansas still won by a lot. But what really proved me that he is as good isn't because he played incredibly well in that A&M game, but because of his ability to facilitate an offense when he couldn't shoot really well. I think, especially for guards, if you can still run an offense and still be kind of a machine and get a lot of assists and draw a lot of pressure and not turn the ball over when you can't hit a shot, it's okay if sometimes you go 3 for 15. Because in the NBA, that happens. You have guys like Luka who sometimes still win games when they're not shooting their best because they're able to contribute in every other possible way offensively, and their gravity is still there because everybody knows they could hit a shot, than playing lights out and hitting every shot. You're not going to have an on game every game. That's just not what it's going to be. And if you can win and contribute extremely positively, whether that's on defense or facilitating or rebounding for a big man in other ways than just scoring, then I think that's an important note. I think some people worry too much about how well you shoot and say, "Oh, that guy's not good. Oh, he couldn't play in the limelight." But I think you learn a lot about a player with their attitude and how they're able to contribute in other areas than scoring whenever they're having an off game.
You make a good point about the off game and just what other ways they do it. I think there is value to seeing you talk about the limelight of what a player does in these moments, because if you think about it, a top pick, you're going to be competing in a game 7 for the finals. That's the whole goal of that top pick. So seeing how a player does in one of these big moments in the later rounds of March Madness, to me, serves as a good indicator of what they need to work on and what he could bring to that franchise, because we've talked about it before. The NBA draft offers a position to where you can really dramatically alter your team with one pick versus the other leagues. So seeing what a player does in March Madness when the lights are bright, to me, offers value. I don't think if he does terrible, he should fall, but it is something to look at and wonder, okay, this is what he can do. This is how he does it.
Yeah, and I think you learn a lot about a player, again, when they're not playing their best, that you don't really get to see during the regular season, because this could be the last game, or would be, if we're talking about potential draft picks that are going to be lottery picks. Let's say we're talking about lottery picks. We'll talk about second-round guys that are seniors later. But for lottery picks, freshmen, sophomores, maybe even seniors that have really risen their stock, they know this is their last time being in college. right? Agent Demancin knows this is it. Same thing with Darius Acuff, Braden Burries, a lot of these guys. This is it. So how you play, knowing your legacy's on the line, I think it's pretty indicative of how a player will play in the NBA mentality-wise. Sure, the skill level may not always carry over. We've seen Jimmer Fredette, even Buddy Hield a little bit, like where they were amazing college players, but not the best whenever it came to the NBA. And that could be, we could talk about coaching or other areas necessarily. But I think a lot of, especially guards, I see this mostly with guards, I learn a lot about them when they're playing against a team that's better than them and how they decide to try to win the game. A lot of players in the NBA, like probably 99.9% of players, cannot will their team on their own to victory 9 in, 9 out. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Luka probably can. Jokic probably can. Or Jokic definitely can. Shea can. There's probably like 10, maybe 15 players in the league currently that can do that. If you decide that I'm going to play hero ball in March to win a game, sure, sometimes I think that could work. Like Carson Edwards. But I think when that's your only way to get your team back on track, I have a little bit more doubt than if you're trying to do it by getting other people involved and, hey, let's win this as a team. Because that's what really the NBA is about. Now, I do think that March Madness does not really show NBA. The NBA is so much different than college because in college, the guys who are role players probably won't be in the league. Well, it's all the best players and amalgamation of those that make it to the league. Yeah, there are some role players that just because of their potential or they're really, really, really good at their role will play in the league, but most of those guys won't be in those situations. So if you can decide, hey, I can do what a role player does while being the best player on my team, I think shows a little bit more character than I'm going to play hero ball, take every shot, and shoot my team potentially out of the game. Like I saw with a couple guys, even last season, like Wade Taylor. Wade Taylor's a player that played for A&M for a while, and I just didn't really enjoy watching him play because he would shoot his team out of games. Like if he had a bad game, A&M was losing because he was shooting 7 for 30 basically. But whenever there's other players that when they didn't win, wouldn't take a crazy, crazy, crazy number of shots, just try to get everybody involved and play really good defense and do all the other things in basketball that can help you win a game, than taking every shot.
Yeah, you make a great point in role players or great players acting like role players. You mentioned seniors. One guy who I think he's not going to be the blueprint of a guy, but Jalen Brunson to me did well at Villanova. He knew how to win, and there were a lot of good NBA players on that team. He's someone that I think there is value in using a second round pick on a guy that spent 4 years in college, did really well at a team that won, because that's exactly what Jalen Brunson did. I don't think he wouldn't be the player he is now if he stayed on the Mavericks, but he's turned into a fantastic player for the Knicks. So if you're a rebuilding team, I think there is value in getting a guy that's been on a team for so long and has really developed in college.
Winners win, and I definitely agree with you there. I mean, Alex Karaban is a guy that comes immediately to mind. He's won 2 titles. He'll try to win his third and be the first person since basically UCLA to win 3 titles in college. But winners win, and I do agree with that. There's a mentality that goes there, and just we're going to find a way. Find a way. That's a saying that I've been told a lot in my sports career, but I think that's an important mentality to not give up and just find a way to get it done. And Brunson's definitely a player that I think exudes that whenever I watched him play, both in college and in the NBA, that Brunson can give you 40, but he also can get 10, 15 assists in a very important game. Talking more about the seniors, I think of seniors more as the defensive guys. Trevon Brazile comes immediately to mind, but there's a lot of good defenders in this draft. that have really risen their stock. And I do think March, like the NBA playoffs, defense is different. It's not the same defense you see in the regular season. While the intensity of the NBA playoffs might be a little bit more than college, defensive wise, but defense doesn't win in the regular season anymore. It can win. Houston, there's a couple teams, but there's more teams that try to win by offense than by defense in college basketball currently. That changes in March. I think defense is significantly more important because defense is more consistent than offense. The odds of you having a bad defensive game from your best player that's a defender is a lot lower than having a bad defensive or having a bad offensive game as an offensive player, because there's a lot more futility about playing offense. I mean, if you shoot 50% from the field, there's going to be some games you shoot 30% from the field, right? So you're missing a good bit of your shots there. But defense, you just got to know how to play the game, be confident in who you're guarding, and it's a lot of effort plays. So I think you learn a lot about how well a player can play defense. And this is where Darren Peterson, there's some players in the NBA who we think of guys who can't really play defense. And most of those guys that I'm thinking about haven't won a title. Almost all of them. Whenever I think of like the guys who don't really try on defense, whether that's Harden. I know Luka has had those concerns. And there's other guys that have had those concerns about, hey, this guy doesn't play defense. I think Peterson's the one that immediately comes to mind in that regard. How much does Darren Peterson buy in to, hey, I need to stop here. Can I guard this guy that has the ball in front of me? I think we'll learn a lot about guys.
Yeah, and Peterson's a really interesting example because he's someone that hasn't played a lot for KU, some with injuries and kind of just knowing where he's going in the draft. So I'm curious to see how he does and what stays the same from his time in college to his NBA and what changes. And that could be defense and either idea. So it will be very interesting. And effort is important, and you can see a lot of guys and what they can do and just how much they care and what they're willing to put value in. So I'm very interested to see what happens in this March, but also just in the future Marches as the NBA draft is so small that there are a lot of guys that can go unsigned.
Yeah. Another, like, when I think about defense, obviously one of my favorite guys in the NBA right now that's all role players like Keon Ellis, who's now made a pretty decent sized role with the Cavs on defense. And he was a senior after he played with Bama, but he was a senior when he went to the draft. And I do think that the way I saw him play in March and before that really helped me be confident in the way, because I think effort goes above most things in any sport, because it can't really, it's really hard to play horrible when you're trying extremely hard. And that's why I bring up Darren Peterson is I think there's genuine concerns about whether or not he's going to be a player that you can put out there and be like, hey, do your best. And he's going to be like, well, I'm not playing well, so I'm not going to do my best. Or I'm not getting the ball as much, so I'm not going to do my best. Or so on and so forth. So I do think that there's some teams that are not going to care about that and may take Peterson number one, because it'd be like, hey, even when he's not trying all that hard, he's still going to be one of our better players. But I do think that it's important to get a guy that you know will buy into whatever system the coach wants, so that we don't have any of the problems where, I mean, we've seen it before where NBA guys have problems with their coaches and vice versa, and guys leave or try to get their coach fired or whatever. But if you have a guy that buys in with a college coach, then he'll probably do the same at the next level.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and we'll have to see just what the NBA values from March Madness, because a lot of them, some players are just drafted on their intangibles and what they can do and what they're expected to do versus what they have done.
Yeah. I'm excited for the draft, and I do think that March Madness should affect draft stock. Would you agree?
Yes, I think it should. There's a lot of value in it.
Yeah, I agree.
So let us know your thoughts in the comments. We appreciate you listening to Outsiders Opinions.